Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Jason Turner was a quiet, unassuming, yet deeply committed man. At 32, he taught history at Lincoln High School, a high school in the heart of Chicago. From a young age, Jason had been shaped by the duality of his background. The only son of Evelyn Turner, a dedicated nurse at Cook County Hospital, and Robert Turner, a mechanic in a South Side garage. He grew up in a neighborhood marked by violence and poverty. Yet he had always refused to let this difficult environment define him. His parents instilled in him strong values, respect, hard work, and the importance of education as a way to raise one's voice and drive real change. Every day, Jason woke up convinced that, despite the obstacles, he could make a difference in the lives of the young people around him, often themselves trapped in a hostile environment. That evening, he was walking home from a meeting with his fellow teachers. They had discussed the growing challenges facing their students, dropping out of school, violence, discrimination, but also the hope for a better future. The sky was dark, a cool breeze stirred the dead leaves on the sidewalk. Jason walked calmly, almost meditatively, along 47th Street, illuminated by the yellowish halos of a tired street lamp that swayed gently in the wind. Suddenly, the silence of the night was broken by the sharp screech of tires as a police car screeched to a halt beside him. Jason jumped, surprised by the sudden interruption. From within, a tense, authoritative voice spoke. "Hey you," shouted a white officer, his jaw clenched, his gaze hard and inquisitive. "Stop." Jason instinctively raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I don't understand," he began, his voice calm but tinged with concern. Before he could say another word, two police officers rushed out of the car. One of them, tall and stout, had a name on his uniform, Derek Collins. His colleague, stockier, was called Mark Hughes. Both looked tense, as if ready to face a threat they had imagined more than they knew. "You fit the description of a robber who hid a jewelry store 2 blocks from here," Derek said in a dry, almost mechanical tone, making no attempt to hide his skepticism. Jason shook his head forcefully, trying to keep himself in check. "You're mistaken. I was at school all day. My colleagues, my students, they can confirm that." But their eyes weren't searching for the truth. They were searching for a culprit. To them, Jason was nothing more than a suspect, a black figure in the night, a presumption of guilt. Derek and Mark lunged at him, not gently. They grabbed him roughly, rifling through his pockets, and snatched his phone and ID as if they were trying to tear them from his skin. The tension rose another notch. Mark sneered contemptuously. "Good, you've got nothing. It just proves you're hiding something." Jason took a deep breath, struggling to remain calm in the face of this unjustified hostility. "I swear you're wrong. I'm innocent." But his words fell on a wall of indifference. The police dragged him to the car like a burden. The shadow of injustice had fallen upon him, without reason, without proof, simply because of prejudice. At the police station, the cell door slammed behind Jason Turner with a final, sharp thud. The air was cold, thick with the acrid smell of metal and mildew. The pale light of a flickering fluorescent lamp revealed the dirty, peeling walls, while the echo of footsteps and voices echoed through the corridors. Jason sat down slowly on the concrete bench, his hands still numb from the brutality of his arrest. His heart was pounding, not only from fear, but more so from the crushing weight of injustice. He pulled out his phone, which had been returned to him, and, with trembling fingers, dialed his mother's number. "Mom, it's me, Jason." The silence was heavy for a few moments. Then Evelyn's voice, broken by emotion, burst through the receiver. "Jason, oh my God, son, what happened to you?" "They arrested me. They say I stole a watch, but it's not true." On the other end of the line, Evelyn burst into tears. "They arrested my son for no reason. It's impossible. I'm going to fight for you, Jason. Don't lose hope." This conversation was his only connection to the outside world for hours that ticked by slowly, icy, almost endlessly. Behind bars, each minute seemed like an eternity. The next morning, in a cold, impersonal office, the prosecutor in charge of the case refused to drop the charges. He relied on the testimony of a saleswoman at a nearby jewelry store, a nervous woman who claimed to have seen a man matching the description given to the police: black figure, medium build, dark clothing. But this testimony was fragile, circumstantial, and above all, did not take into account evidence to the contrary. Jason spent his first night in prison in a stark cell, surrounded by distant screams, the palpable anguish of his fellow inmates, and hostile stares that gave him no respite. He felt the weight of the walls closing in on him, an invisible cage of prejudice and mistrust. Outside, the Turner family refused to give in. Evelyn, exhausted but determined, urgently contacted her brother Michael Johnson, a renowned lawyer specializing in civil rights and justice issues. Michael arrived quickly, a bag of documents under his arm, his gaze grave. He knew time would be their enemy, but he had no intention of leaving Jason alone to face this judicial machine. He began to painstakingly gather evidence. He interviewed witnesses from the school, Jason's colleagues, and combed through surveillance video from the surrounding streets. Gradually, he discovered that another man, a white man with a criminal record, fit the profile of the real thief much better. But despite this overwhelming evidence, the justice system seemed deaf, slow, and implacably cold to the racial and social realities that often determined the outcome of such cases. Every day in prison was a new ordeal. The guards, often indifferent or even hostile, treated Jason with a cold strictness that sometimes went beyond the limits of the rules. Some inmates, marked by their own anger and fear, saw him as an intruder, a suspect because of his calm and manner. Jason endured these heavy looks, these whispers, and sometimes even these provocations, always with dignity, clenching his fists to keep from giving in to anger. In the silence of his cell, he found refuge in writing. He scribbled letters to his students, his friends, his parents. These words were bridges to freedom, calls for justice, flashes of hope in a dark tunnel. "Never lose faith in yourself," he wrote, "even when the world seems to be crumbling around you." The weeks passed, heavy and painful. Michael Johnson worked tirelessly, exhausted but determined to prove his nephew's innocence. Every night, he watched and re-watched surveillance videos recovered from nearby businesses, scrutinizing every detail. Then, one evening, light pierced the darkness. In one of the videos, clearly visible, a white man with a scarred face, wearing a dark jacket, was furtively grabbing a gold watch from the targeted jewelry store. The man moved confidently, far from Jason's silhouette. Michael knew immediately that this was the decisive piece of evidence. He contacted his team, prepared a strong case, and requested a new hearing for Jason. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. Jason, dressed in a sober suit, held his mother Evelyn's hand, while Michael calmly explained the facts to the judge. The lawyer showed the video, silent but eloquent. All eyes turned to the screen, where the real culprit was clearly identifiable. Derek Collins and Mark Hughes, the arresting officers, watched, pale as they watched. The judge, after reviewing the evidence and hearing the testimony, had no choice but to order Jason Turner's immediate release, a decision that marked the end of his legal ordeal. For Jason, however, this victory was tinged with bitterness. The shadow of those weeks of incarceration still hung over him. His reputation, even after his proven innocence, seemed tarnished in the eyes of some. He felt a deep fatigue, an invisible wound made of doubts and fragile confidence. Yet he was free. Back home, Jason returned to his teaching profession with renewed energy, a rekindled inner fire. Every day in his classroom, he shared more than academic knowledge. He spoke of justice, racism, and courage. "Understanding our differences," he told his students, "is the first step in changing the world." With Michael and Evelyn, they founded an association dedicated to supporting victims of wrongful arrests, providing legal and psychological support, and campaigning for police and judicial reforms. As the months passed, Jason gradually regained confidence in himself and in the future. His family was a strong pillar, and the local community was beginning to hear their voices. One evening, as he read a message on his phone, a quiet smile lit up his tired face. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. You taught us to fight for what is right." A former student. This simple message, small but powerful, was a balm to his wounds. Jason understood that his fight, though difficult, was not in vain. He was not alone. The road would be long and fraught with obstacles, but he would walk with courage, determination, and the certainty that every voice counted.